Hello and welcome everyone. It's been a while, hasn't it? Sorry about that. Taking a little break. But today I'm going to talk to you about how to design with chalk. But first, a quick intro for those who are new to the channel. Hello, I'm Shannon, owner of Shrush Design. I specialize in hand-lettered and illustrated designs for things like signage, murals, invitations and other stationery, digital graphics, and more. Here on YouTube, I make tutorials of how to do these projects, my methods, the tools I use, and the software I use on a regular basis. For anyone who may be interested, I now also have a free companion course to go along with these videos here on YouTube, where you can get access to additional notes, any digital downloads you may need, extra practice, and the direction of where to go once you master the tutorial. You can find that link down in the description, or just go to my website, www.shrushdesign.com, and look for the online courses section. Okay, let's get on with the tutorial. Alright, so I'm talking about chalk in this video, not chalk markers, not paint markers, anything like that, chalk. So the one I usually use is the anti-dust chalk from Crayola, and some colored Crayola chalk as well, but you can also use sidewalk chalk, and I do have this street sticks that I've used out in the sidewalk before, but not on my chalkboard, but I'm pretty sure I could use it. Anyway, so chalk is pretty easy to remove from most surfaces, especially a chalkboard like this. So I'm using a dry cloth here to wipe it away. Now, because my surface here is technically a drywall that has some texture on it, and I just painted over it with chalkboard paint, there is a little bit of a bumpiness to it. So it's a little harder to get off with just the dry cloth, so I do use a wet cloth to get, if I want it completely, at least to look a little more uniform without any ghosting, which we'll talk about in a minute. And I like to speed up the drying process by wiping it off with a dry cloth again afterwards. But it doesn't take too long to dry. Since we're talking about erasing here, another thing you can do is you can use a cotton swab, either dry like this, or I'll show you wet in a moment, to erase some of the chalk dust off the surface. As for the chalk itself, as you probably know, it comes in these sticks and it has a flat end on each side. You can actually sharpen the end if you want. Most of these sharpeners that you can buy have those two holes in them. One's for a pencil or something smaller, and one is the bigger one that's for chalk. And then you just stick it in there and turn. It's going to take a little while. And now I also like to keep my chalk dust. I'll show you one of the uses in a minute. So I just grab a container and dump the chalk dust in there. Okay, now you can see the difference between a regular dull piece of chalk and the pointed piece that I just sharpened. So it can make different size lines. Now that's what I'm going to show you. But first I want to show you also, this is another piece of chalk I have laying around. It has the side kind of flattened. That's because I've used it horizontally on the board. So one of the reasons you would do this is to season your chalkboard. Now, mine's technically seasoned already. It's very seasoned. But if you have a new chalkboard surface, you definitely want to do this to kind of get this layer of chalk dust on the surface so that it kind of protects it from anything. This is especially if you're using chalk markers. But if you're using chalk, it's not as bad, except if you have an uneven surface like I do. But this will help with the ghosting, or some people call it burning, like whatever you've drawn with the chalk or chalk marker on your surface, kind of coming through. No matter how many times you clean, you can kind of still see it. And that still happens after you season it every once in a while too, but it's a little better when you season it. So you just wipe it away like that, and then it's got this layer of background kind of cloudiness. Alright, so this first line I'm making with a dull piece of chalk, that flattened sort of end. The second line I'm making with a sharpened piece of chalk that's got that very pointy end. And this third line I'm actually using at a 45-ish degree angle, where it's like the surface of the point, but not the point itself, like the side of the point, before it gets to the full part of the chalk, if you know what I mean. So it's kind of in the middle of the other two, where it's a little bit bigger than the point, but smaller than that dull, flat piece. Now another thing you can do with chalk, similar to like a pencil and paper, you can smudge with either your finger, or you can use a cotton swab or some other kind of like sponge or something that's made for doing this. But if you are using your finger, make sure that, it's not oily or even wet from when you were washing chalkboard earlier. And if it is, you can add a little bit of chalk dust. As I said before, that's a reason you can keep it, to kind of keep that oil off your fingers. If you're going to be smudging or even erasing with your fingers, you want to keep oil off your chalkboard. Another thing you can do, now I'm not able really to do this on my surface. If it was a smoother surface, it would work better. But if you have like a lot of chalk dust kind of on one spot like this, you can, if you don't want to disturb anything around it, you can use your breath like the big bad wolf, like a huff and puff, and blow the chalk dust off the chalkboard if you have an excess. Again, because my surface is more irregular, the chalk dust kind of gets stuck in there a little more, so it's not really loose. Another thing you can do though, if you do have a lot of loose dust on the surface and you don't want to necessarily smudge your chalk, you want that kind of defined line, you can just kind of pat with your finger along your line, or you can use a cotton swab too, but just pat along the line. Don't smudge. Don't rub your finger or whatever tool you're using along the thing. Just pat it in, and that will kind of push that dust a little more into the surface, so it's not sitting there loose, so it's not going to be easily with like wind or you blowing on it. If you have a smoother surface, it won't come off as easily that way. Alright, now I want to show you a few different things you can do as far as making lines. I'm a lettering artist, so I'm going to use some letters to show you. So in this first one here, I am drawing a letter A, and I'm using a thicker piece of chalk, like a duller piece. And then I'm going to draw next to it with a sharper piece of chalk to show you kind of the contrast, kind of give a little shadow. And then for this next one, I'm going to show you, you can use a shortened version of a piece of chalk, like if you've worn it down or if it broke, use the side of that to make the thickness of the piece of chalk, rather than going over your thicker lines a few times, even with a dull piece if you want it bigger than that. It's an easy way to do it in one stroke, or at least pretty close to one stroke. And then you can really see the contrast here if you make a smaller line next to it, how big and how small each of those lines are. And here's a closer look just to show you. So another thing you can do to kind of make a contrast between these two lines and make a shadow-ish kind of thing, you can smudge your smaller line there. This makes kind of a soft shadow. And I'll do that on the other one as well. And here's a close-up. Now you can also do some further contrast. If you take a cotton swab like this, you can use it dry or wet. I show you both ways. Gives you a little bit of a different effect each time. But you can see using that cotton swab, it'll take some of that chalk dust away and kind of erase it. And like I said, if it's dry, it's going to be a little bit lighter, less contrast. But if you do it wet, it's going to be a lot of contrast. So here is the close-up of that. And the next thing I'm going to show you, I'm going to use some colored chalk this time because these things are a little easier to see with color. And I'm also going to use a simpler letter. I'm going to go with the capital I, but without the little line on the top and the bottom, just a straight line. And I'm going to do kind of an ombre effect. And you can do this in either direction. I'm going to start with the top and have that be the heaviest color. And then I'm going to blend and bring that down to make it lighter towards the bottom. So it's kind of a gradient as you go down. And you can do this very easily with just smudging the color, just putting it all on the top there and then just smudging it down slowly. And another similar thing you can do, you can blend two colors together or more. I'm going to do two here. And actually, when I made that outline in the reddish pink color, I probably should have outlined in the orange color I'm going to use on the bottom, but oh well. You can do either or depending on which kind of look you're going for. But what I'm doing is I'm coloring in the top with that reddish pink color. And then on the bottom, I'm going to use that orange color. And then I'm going to smudge with different fingers. So the first one, I'm going to use my pointer finger, which I used for the last one, with that red color. And then I'm going to use my middle finger for the orange to make sure I don't have any red on that finger yet. And then I'm going to use my ring finger to blend them both together in the middle. So I'm just kind of bringing that orange up into the pink or the red, and then bringing the reddish pink down into the orange. So then another thing you can do with a cotton swab, it's a real good tool for this. If you want a more defined edge on whatever you've drawn, in this case the letter I here, you can use your cotton swab to kind of go along the edge where you may have smudged a little bit out of where that original edge of the letter was that you drew. You can kind of go over that with a dry or wet cotton swab. Now, if you use the wet cotton swab, you're going to end up with both a lot of contrast to what you've drawn and also the rest of your chalkboard, because most likely the rest of your chalkboard isn't wet like that, where the entire thing is kind of clean. If you want it to be, you'd have to clean that whole thing. So in the same realm of what I'm talking about here, you can also do like a neon or glowing effect. So I'm going to show you how to do that. First, write or draw whatever you're going to do, just as you would normally. Then you want to smudge those letters. They come out a little bit from where they were, kind of glowing out a little bit. And then you're going to go back over the original lines in a defined line. So you want a sharpened piece of chalk, or at least the end of the chalk, not smudged. So you have like a clearly defined line in the middle, but then you have kind of glowing coming off of that. So this is what that looks like. Now you can take it a step further and you can go over your lines with white to give that kind of bright light in the middle, depending on what kind of look you want or how much contrast you want. So that's what this looks like. Okay, next I'm going to show you a few different ways that you can make kind of a three-dimensional look with shadows and otherwise. We kind of went over this first one before, but I'm going to show you it again. So what I'm doing is drawing a letter A, and then making a thinner line for a shadow next to the letter A on the left side. So for all these examples, I'm having the light source be on the right, coming to the left, so that the shadows will always be on the left side. So for this next one, I am drawing an A again, and then I'm going to do first a small line next to the letter A again, and then I'm going to smudge that line to make it like a soft shadow. And then the next one, I'm going to make the thicker letter A again, and then I'm going to smudge that, and then make a defined line for a shadow. So you get three different kind of effects here, depending on what you want it to look like. And this is a closer look at those. For these next three examples, I'm going to make a smudged version of the letter A, a little bit thicker, and then I'm going to do kind of a hatched shadow on here. Now, I actually didn't do a great job in the video. It looks a little better from this angle, but once you see the close-ups, you're going to be like, ugh, at least I was. So again, for the shadow, I'm making little hatch marks instead of a straight line. For this next one, I'm going to make the hatch marks a little further apart. And in this last one, I know I'm blocking the camera, of course, but I'll show you what I did in a minute. I made a simple line like I did in the first couple examples up there, and then I made hatch marks off that line, so it's a little more defined. So you'll see the difference when I do the close-ups. And here they are. And just to show you a couple ways more to do a shadowed kind of letter here. This isn't my favorite way to do it, but I'm just going to show you. So you can make a thicker smudged A. And then when you make the shadow lines, you can do a couple different lines and then make them shorter each time, rather than just the one. For the second one in this row, I'm just going to make a thicker line but not smudge it for the A. And then I'm going to smudge the smaller lines that I made with the sharpened piece of chalk. So that's a quick view what those look like. And then for this last one, in this row, I'm going to use that shortened piece of chalk again on its side and make a very thick line, and then I'm going to do an outline around it with a sharpened piece of chalk. And then I'm going to do little extrusions on the left half of the letter by just drawing an empty box off the left side. And here's another look at that row. And for this last one, I'm going to do a faceted A, or some people call it a beveled A or letter. So I'm drawing a quick outline of an A. I don't want it filled in this time, and I kind of messed this up, so bear with me. I didn't realize that horizontal crossbar there of the A was too big, so I fixed that afterwards. But anyway, for this A, what I do is I take the top and the bottom, like the top apex of the A, and then the two legs that come down. I'm going to make a little triangle off of those towards the center of the letter. And this is where I fixed that horizontal crossbar that was too big. My legs are also a little lopsided there. One of them's bigger than the other. But then I'm going to connect the triangles basically with a line. And then I'm going to make that crossbar again right through the middle. And now I'm going to shade in different opacities basically, the different facets of the A. So for the two sides of the A, the two legs of the A, I'm doing the right half, basically. And then for the crossbar, I'm doing the bottom in the darker version, or the one that has more coverage on it. Then I'm going to do the little triangles that I made off the apex and the legs in kind of a medium opacity. So a little bit, not adding too much chalk dust to it, but just kind of pulling in some of it. And then the remaining three parts there, the left of the legs and the top of the crossbar, I'm going to just lightly pull in some of that from the line that's already there. I had to go back and do the leftmost side because that one was too light compared to the other ones, so I had to add some chalk dust on there and bring it in. But here's a close-up of that. Again, it's a little lopsided. And there you have it, a few different ways you can design with chalk. Alright everyone, that's it for this video, but heads up, I've still got some bonus footage and sneak peeks coming up shortly. First of all though, I want to thank you, yes you, for watching this video. I do really appreciate it. If you appreciate me back, the best way to show me is to use those buttons on subscribe is the best one, but the other ones work great too. Always check the video description for any updates, announcements, and any relevant links you may need. These are my official social media accounts and other channels for you to check out. Don't fall for any scams or imitations. All of these are linked in the description and also on my website, www.shrushdesign.com as well. Now here's that bonus footage I promised. I didn't have too much for bonus footage this week, but I did have a few kind of moments where something went wrong. And since I wasn't really talking on the camera, I'm doing a voiceover, I kind of mimed what the problem was. So enjoy that. And then, okay, for sneak peeks. So I don't have any peeks, really, other than the thing that I just put out recently on the channel as a short. And this is a project I did last year. I did release a short video on it, but I didn't really explain what I was doing. But last year I did a chalk festival in, I think it was July, using one of my quotes that I broke down to sort of make a sign with, along with some other quotes that I did last year in my spring signage layout video. I'll link that if you're interested. But originally last year I was supposed to take all those quotes and make signs out of them. Well, I didn't really do that except for this one, which I ended up doing in July. But I'm going to revisit all those this year in upcoming videos. So starting next week, I'm going to do 2 videos. So next week and the week after, I'm going to do my spring signage videos with those quotes that I did from that video. And here's kind of what I was planning on doing, breaking them up. 1 means next week, the first week. 2 means 2 weeks from now. And then the 1 quote there with the WM, I'm going to be doing another window mural for spring. And this time I plan on finishing it. But hopefully, we'll see. Because last year I didn't finish mine. So that's going to be another video. I think that'll be coming out, I'm not sure exactly when that is in the schedule. It might come out after those signage videos, like right after, and it might be a little bit after that. I don't know. We'll see. See how far I get. But for now, you have to look forward to the signage videos. I also do have Procreate videos coming out very soon. Going to be continuing those as well. So, in fact, I have one coming out this Friday, and hopefully the next couple of weeks on both Mondays and Fridays. So, if you still want to learn about Procreate, I have those videos coming out as well. But that's it for this week. Again, I'm sorry I was gone so long, had some stuff I had to work on in the background, and I needed a break to kind of recharge myself, but I am ready to go now, and I think, everything's fine. There's no chaos going on. I think I will be able to continue putting videos out now. But thanks for watching, and thanks for being here. See you next week.